Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Youngstown Click Be Connected podcast. I am so happy that you all are here with us. Wait until you hear this week's guest. What a story. So buckle up and get ready for this ride. But our guest today has a mission and a message to share. And so we're not going to wait. We're going to get right into it. Before we do, I just want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. I'll mention them again at the end. But let's go ahead and get right into this story, okay? All right, so Aaron Shope. I always remember that because it rhymes with hope, and that's part of your big message. Go ahead and introduce yourself and talk to us about why you're here today.
So, like she said, my name is Aaron Shope, and it does rhyme with hope. I like to say I'm Aaron Shope, giving you the rope to hope.
Rope to hope. Little tongue twister.
So my main mission is to just spread my story, and my story is extensive. It goes over the whole entirety of my life. Addiction has affected me in every possible way you could imagine, and I've been through a variety of other traumas as well that allow me to relate to a large swath of people.
Of an audience.
Right.
So, okay, real quick, just to kind of set the platform in the background, everybody's got a story. Everybody, and it doesn't take looking far or long to hear somebody's incredible story of resilience and hope or triumph over, insurmountable odds. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
The reason I have you on here today is because of what you want to accomplish through having been through that.
Right.
And so you are a speaker,
I
right?
am. Yes.
Okay. And you travel and you speak to schools, you speak to addiction centers.
Yep. Churches, schools, addiction centers, corporations. I've done speaking for a large variety of venues.
Okay. And what is your resounding message just overall? And then we're going to get into your story. I want you to take us back to the beginning of being a child. I know some of the story, but we're just going to kind of walk through that because I really want people to know why you're here telling a story. You're not just telling a story saying, "Oh, look at me, I have a story," but there's a message through it.
Right. So the main message, excuse me, the main message I'm trying to present is that you can overcome anything. And I do mean literally anything. There are a lot of people right now who think that they've been handed a terrible hand in life, that there's no way that they're ever going to get out of this. They just feel like the deck is not only stacked against them, but just piled on top of them, and that there is no way that they're going to be able to fight out of this. And my message is you can absolutely fight your way out of anything if you take it just a little bit at a time. I think everybody wants to eat the elephant in one bite, and they don't realize that it's actually multiple small bites that allow you to get the job done.
So that's interesting because absolutely there are some people, and to be honest, there are some stories I hear or some stories of people still in these moments, and your brain goes, man, like, is there any hope for this person? This deck has been stacked against them so much before they even have a chance.
Right.
So let's go back to that 5-year-old. Talk to us about, let's start from when you were a child.
Start from the beginning.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
because you were one of those children. I'm sure. Okay.
Absolutely. Like I said, addiction has affected my whole entire life. When I was 5 months old, my mother went to the store for diapers one night and didn't come home. Turns out that she was addicted to cocaine and alcohol and other variety of drugs. She had left me, my brother, and my half-brother, Jeremy, with my dad and took off and ended up with a couple of guys. With the drugs and everything, they ended up shooting and killing a man, and she ended up spending 37 years in a variety of women's prisons throughout California. From that second-degree murder, she was sentenced to 15 to life. And in California, it's called an indeterminate sentence. And in California, only 2% of indeterminate sentences are released. So if you get a 15 to life or a 25 to life, more than likely you're doing life. She was released because she actually had emphysema.
Okay.
And they released her on what's called a compassionate release, but what it really was is the medical cover. They just didn't want to have to pay all the medical bills that would take to keep her healthy.
So then, did she pass away?
She did.
After,
she was released after 37 years. She was outside for 2 years, and then she passed away. I never did get a chance to meet her, but I spoke to her several times on Facebook and on the phone and that after she got out. But we never really had like a mother-son relationship.
Right.
You know.
Okay, so she didn't last long after she got out of prison.
No.
Was she like repentant, or like how? What was her when you talked to her?
She was.
I know
repentant.
we're kind of going off on a rabbit trail right now.
She was repentant from the day she was in there. I think that this was more of the drugs than her personality causing this situation. And then once she had some time away from the drugs and she started to really take a look at what had happened, she realized, the mistakes that she had made. But sometimes we make mistakes that are just we have to pay for them.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's one of the inspiring stories that kind of inspired me is my mom, that even though she spent 37 years in prison, she became an optometrist. She started a women's group for prisoners.
Wait, she became an optometrist in prison?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she did. She actually was an optometrist in prison. She would see other inmates and get them glasses and whatever, And she also started a women's program for women who get out of prison, like her. She'd been in for 37 years. You understand? She went in 1978.
Okay.
She got out little later 2000s.
Okay.
And so you can only imagine.
That's it's like a whole identity.
Yeah, it would be like a whole new thing.
Wow.
So
okay, so I know we're kind of stuck on your mom right now, but one more question about that. Okay, I know I'm going to start because that was like loud. Okay.
No, you're good.
So I know that we're kind of stuck on your mom real quick. So we're just pausing your story for a second.
Right.
But you had mentioned at one point when we were talking about this that she got addicted to drugs because of her sister-in-law.
Yes,
right?
my dad's sister.
This is interesting because when somebody gives you a pill or they say, hey, I know you're stressed out, or hey, I know you're going through a hard time, here, why don't you take this? They have no clue what's 20 years down the road for you.
Absolutely not.
Tell us, who was it? It was your dad's sister.
So it was my dad's sister. Her name was Lois. She also passed away from an overdose.
Wow.
And she just was one of them people, My mom and her were close. They were friends. I'm not aware of the whole story, but I do know that that's where it all began, was hanging out with her, take this, a little bit of that, just have some fun, maybe smoke a little weed. It always starts small.
Right. And nobody ever thinks that it's going to turn into something. It's just for the
never
moment.
going to, nobody ever sets out to be a drug addict. Like no one ever says, you know what, I want to be a drug addict. That's, it just ends up happening. So anyway, moving
so back to you. Yeah.
So moving past that,
we might have a few more.
We literally could do a whole podcast on my mom and the things she's been through.
We might have a couple more rabbit trails as you go, because that's how I am with stories. I want the details.
Don't get surprised.
Okay. Yeah. So all right. So at 5 years old, she leaves.
5 months.
5 months.
I was 5 months.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Now at 5 years, there's another. So there is a 5-year thing with me. I like to brag that I haven't went 5 years in my whole entire life without a severe trauma.
And it's not really a brag thing.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
It just goes to show you what you can overcome.
Okay.
And how much you can overcome. So when I was about 5 years old, my dad, after losing my mom, he never remarried. He was raising me and my brother Adam. My half-brother Jeremy went with my mother's parents because he was not my dad's. So he ended up going off there. So it's just me, my dad, and my brother Adam. Now at 5 years old, he started drinking. He started having a little bit of problem with drinking too much alcohol, and he became abusive to us kids. One day he abused us a little too much, and when we went to school, they noticed the marks, which placed us into the system.
Wow, the foster care system.
Yeah.
Okay.
So We were in the foster care system for a couple of years.
Now, at this point, were you in California? Where were you?
This
in
was
Ohio?
actually in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we were in the foster care system for a couple of years, and that ended up being worse than you think. Oh, good, they're safe, but actually we weren't, because me and my brother were actually sexually trafficked through the foster care system for a couple of years. And luckily my dad got his stuff together and jumped through all the hoops and got us back. And, I say that we were better off with my dad. I mean, yeah, he hit us and he abused us, but it wasn't as bad as foster care, that's for sure.
Was there just no oversight? Like no?
Yeah, no. The person who was taking care of our case was just a terrible
Corrupt.
person, and we went through a dozen foster care homes in just a couple of years.
Hard to believe that happens right here.
And it still happens.
Yeah.
So let's not pretend like it doesn't still happen. It is a huge, huge problem. The sexual trafficking of children in this country. We are in the top 5 of destinations for sexual traffickers. It's it's unacceptable. It really is. So surviving that, I was young. I was 4 or 5 years old. My brother was 4 years older than me. So he got a lot more affected by it, and it continued to affect him, and he began to take on traits of that. So he suffered a lot through his childhood, and then, with me being his younger brother, that relayed down to me. So Adam just had a really tough time. He was older when my mom left, so he remembers that. I don't. He remembers a lot of the foster care stuff, or he remembered a lot of the foster care stuff, and I don't.
Oh, I just want to hug you guys as children.
So he had some issues in school. He just behavioral issues, learning issues. He was diagnosed ADD. And I think all kids were diagnosed ADD back then. Ritalin was a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
And
they were drug dealing. They were created drug
that's
addicts.
Exactly what it was. They didn't know what to do with the kids, and instead of handling them the right way, they just put drugs into them and said, "Oh, that calms them down. Seems fine."
Particularly boys, I realize.
Yes.
In retrospect, it particularly boys.
I think girls handle stress differently. I think boys act out more outwardly, like in public, like in a, where girls seem to more inwardly, more privately, and
really struggle kind of
in a different kind of a way.
I think that it was like maybe a shift over from boys being boys. You think back to the 50s, there were, meet me on the in the gym or whatever.
Take you out behind the shed,
or there was, or they'd go hunting or fishing, and all of a sudden we were in this generation where parents were not taking their kids hunting and fishing.
Right. Yeah.
Kids were just, it was like they had to make it the kids' problem rather than a society problem. But that's
instead of working with the families and the schools, and they still try to do this. They separate. We can handle this at school without involving the parents, and I'm just, I believe, I'm not it takes a village kind of guy, but I do believe that collaboration between. I'm not sure why that happened. That was really weird. Nobody stop it with the crickets. All right, that's what you get. You're gonna cut that out.
What is going on? Wait a minute.
I don't know.
Okay. Oh my! It's like hold on. I will fix that right now.
Yeah. What is going? That's so weird.
I don't know
Why
what's
does it keep doing that? All right, we're going to have some editing to do.
All right.
Sorry about that. We had some crickets. That's how boring this story is.
We were like, it's like our sign. Like, okay, quit going on and on.
All right, yeah.
No, but I really do think that it affected a generation, because instead of dealing or giving anybody the tools to get through things.
Right.
And I know people personally that have struggled with drugs later on in life that were put on Ritalin early, and they hated it.
Absolutely.
I have
now
very
it's
close
Adderall.
Yeah.
They've just switched from Ritalin to Adderall, which is
Right.
just methamphetamine,
Right.
honestly. In
And
a
we
pill
see it
form.
affecting schools. We see it affecting society.
Absolutely.
And it's just,
Absolutely. Again, a whole nother podcast we could do. So,
right. But,
so
I mean,
moving
that
right
won't be the
along.
last rabbit trail.
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
no, it will not.
FYI, guys.
Moving right along. So I will say this about my dad. Once my dad got us back, he never drank again.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't go through a program. He didn't do AA. He didn't do anything. He said that my children are more important than drinking. And I'm going to tell a quick story about that.
Oh.
The day he realized it, he told me the story. He said, the day I realized that my drinking was a real problem was we were at a store. And he said, you asked me for a toy. And it was $20. And he said, I remember vividly telling you, no, we don't have the money for that. You know, stop asking. And obviously I was a kid. So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
you know, and it became a big thing. And he took me out, put me in the car. And then he went inside the liquor store to buy a bottle of Black Velvet. That's what he drank.
Wow.
And when he picked up the bottle of Black Velvet, it was $20. And he said, I can afford to buy this bottle of liquor, but I can scream at my little child because he wanted a toy that was $20. And he said he placed the bottle back, and that was it. He just never touched alcohol again. He said that it just logically it didn't make sense to him. Because I always said, oh, you know, Dad, you quit drinking for us because you loved us so much, and you know, you just loved us kids so much. And he went, yeah, no, that's not the reason I quit drinking.
Right.
I quit drinking because it logically just did not make sense to me anymore to do that. He said, of course I loved you kids, but he said, honestly, it was that moment in time that he looks back to that makes him think, you know, that was it. So moving on, my brother had a lot of behavioral problems, and, you know, things I'm just not going to get into right now, but he just had,
So
there was a lot of it.
How old are we talking right now?
I was 12, so he would have been 16.
About 16, okay.
And that's when he started to really get into smoking weed and drinking, and then cocaine, and then methamphetamines, and then it was pretty much everything. And you see, in 2013, my dad shot and killed my brother in self-defense. He was on a week-long Adderall bender. He had gotten my dad's gun and was trying to commit suicide. My dad actually caught him with the gun in his mouth trying to pull the trigger, and he didn't realize that the safety was on. My dad realized what was going on, grabbed the gun, somehow got the gun away from my brother, you know, and my brother threatened him and said, you know, shoot me. My dad said, I don't want to shoot you, Adam. I love you. You're my son. He said, I'm going to make you shoot me. And he did. My dad shot him one time in the chest. And
because he didn't have a gun at that point, right?
He was going to punch him. And you got to understand, my dad was 70-some years old. So when he reared
so
back
he wanted
to hit
to kill,
him, when he reared back to hit him, my dad just out of instinct shot him.
Wow.
So I listened to that 911 call one time. And I will never listen to it again. I've never heard my father, and actually just now thinking about it, it's actually making me choke up a little bit because I've never heard my dad in a panic. My whole life, I've never heard him in a panic. I've never heard him yelling.
He was a veteran. He was a tough guy, right?
Yeah. He was a Vietnam vet. He's, you know, he's a tough guy. He's 6'6", you know, 280 pounds. I mean, he's not, you know, he's
I
not
never
a little
met
guy.
him, but you showed me pictures.
He's a big guy. So he was no weakling. And to hear him break down like that on the 911 call, it was just devastating to me.
Wow.
So to kind of transfer over, that was the end of my brother's story. And to transfer that over, during that whole time, I was actually in an addiction myself. In 2001, I was in a motorcycle accident, and I was placed on opiates for a year and a half for the pain. Well, this was back at the time when the government was really trying to crack down on the opioid epidemic, and they did so by restricting how many prescriptions a doctor could write for pain pills. So what they did was they told these doctors, you have this amount of time to get this many patients off of the drug. That's it, or we're going to start fining you. We're going to start pulling your licenses. We're going to start cracking down on you.
Yeah.
So what that caused the doctors to do was panic themselves and start just throwing people off of the drug. So what they did was they took the cases that they really didn't think absolutely needed it, and they just cut them off. So one day,
they didn't wean them down or
No,
cut them.
not at all. No.
They just said no. So the accident was in 2001. What year? How long after the accident would
it would have been 2003-ish?
So you had been on opiates for 2 years.
About a year and a half. It was a little over a year and a half legally that I was on them. Yeah.
Wow.
And then, like I said, I went in one day for my script, not even knowing anything. You know, you got to understand, I wasn't an addict. I mean, I was technically, but I didn't know anything about drug addiction.
You were
at the
taking
time.
medication.
I mean, I smoked a little weed and I
Okay.
drank and stuff as a kid, you know, but I was never really a drug addict. I wasn't, you know, into it like that.
Okay.
And so I didn't even think of anything. So I went in to get my script one day, and the doctor said, "We're actually not going to write you a script anymore. We think you're good, and we don't think you need them anymore. And you could look at some holistic medicines and some over-the-counter medicines to deal with the pain and stuff." And, you know, they never gave me an idea of what was coming.
Wait, and sent you on your way?
That's it. Yep, sent me on my way. So I got home, and my roommate that I was living with at the time, I told him what happened. And he said, "Oh, man, I feel sorry for you in a couple of days." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, because you're going to go through withdrawal." And I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I took the pills I was supposed to." I said, I didn't. I said, "Okay." You know, I didn't even think nothing of it. I just said, "Okay, man, whatever."
Normal. That'd be
whatever.
Oh,
Next day I woke up, I was okay. I wasn't too bad. The following day I woke up and I've never been so sick in my entire life. I mean, you know, I don't get too graphic, but I was literally sitting on a toilet, throwing up in the bathtub at the same time. And my roommate came in and said, I told you you were going to be sick." And he ended up giving me, he was also on opiates. And it is funny how birds of a feather flock together, by the way, even without knowing it. And he said, "Here, take one of these. You'll be fine for the day." So I did. I took one of his Percocets, and he wasn't wrong. In about 15 minutes, all symptoms were gone. I was feeling perfectly normal again.
Oh, my.
And that began a 20-year opiate addiction, which went from
20 years.
Yeah, almost. And which went, because I include the year and a half that I was on.
Right,
Yeah.
well, because
Right. So it went from pills, and then with the crackdown of people getting thrown off of pain management, there was a lot less pills to find, so the prices started going up, and they were harder to find.
Right, because there's fewer out
And
there.
if you're in that addiction, you learn that you can use heroin. And so it went from, I couldn't find pills, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to be a heroin addict. Like,
No, and
you know,
people,
when it was first introduced to me, I was like, "No, you're out your mind. I'll just stick with pills, thank you." But, you know, the more and more they taught, they said, "You don't understand. You take way less. It lasts way longer. It's the same thing, really. You're not, you know." So I started with that, and I started by snorting it and smoking it. And then, you know, just like most people, not everyone, but most people who use heroin, they end up on the needle. And it's just because it's vastly superior to any other methods of using it. You use way less. Again, it lasts way longer.
Wow.
So the financial argument and just the use argument, but I say it lasts way longer, and it does in the beginning. Everything ends up being not enough after a while.
Before, do you remember how many pills that you were up to per day?
Yeah. Okay, so when
you were being prescribed them?
When I was prescribed them, I was prescribed 3 30s a day, 3 Percocet 30s a day, and 2 15s for breakthrough pain, what's called breakthrough pain. So like if you're having pain, but you're already on, you know, you can take that to kind of take the edge off. So you look at that, it's 90, so 120 milligrams a day. So now to give you a comparison for people who aren't like, I don't know what that means. If you have a tooth pulled, they usually give you 5 milligrams.
Oh, my.
Okay. The most they'll ever give you for like a tooth extraction is 10 milligrams, and they really only give you like maybe 10 of those.
Wow. So at this point, your back and legs, as far as physical pain from the accident, you no longer felt. It was at this point, it was just
it was in my head. There was nothing wrong with me physically, but in my head, I thought I was in pain. And then once I realized I was addicted, it wasn't about the pain no more.
Of course not. Right.
It was about just being normal, because I had a really good job. I was the district manager of a large company, and I had a girlfriend with 2 kids that I was taking care of, not my kids, but her kids, but I loved them. We'd been together for several years.
Okay.
And so I had responsibilities.
Right.
I was what they, would consider a productive drug addict. I got up every day. I went to work. I did my job. I come home. I got the kids dinner. I got them up for school. I helped them with their homework. I mean, nobody would have ever known that I was addicted to drugs, and they didn't for a long, long time. I mean, you can manage this for a long time, but everybody, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be the first successful drug addict. I wasn't. No one else is. You're not going to ever introduce me to a successful drug addict because they don't exist. So that being said,
I remember, on a side note, I have a friend who she kind of relapsed, but she had been a heroin addict and she relapsed with cocaine. And she said, I promise you this is nothing. I'm not addicted to cocaine. I was addicted to heroin. And she said, so she was like, I'm good, I promise. And I was like, okay. And then next thing you know, she was right back. I mean,
absolutely.
But it's interesting how the drug addicts in that moment, they really do want to convince themselves that this is not my problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it was because of a relationship. It was because of this or that.
Yeah.
But, so, okay.
It's everybody else's fault but our own always.
How long then? Okay, so 20-ish years.
I would
and then
say on that, I would
say
say about 15, 16 years of just being,
like a working alcoholic.
No. I would say that would be about a little less than 10 years. I was actually, I went to work, I got up, I did my drugs, but there were days, it's
and you were making pretty good money, right? So it wasn't like you had a panhandle to get your drug money or anything.
I made really good money.
Yeah.
And it was a dynamic situation.
Yeah.
So every day wasn't exactly the same.
Right.
You'd get up, some days would be okay, some days wouldn't be okay.
Yeah.
Some days you'd be able to find things and it wasn't hard. Some days you wouldn't be able to find it and you were sick all day.
Right.
But you just battle through it.
Man.
And like I said, I was the district manager for a large company, and they would send me around, so I would travel to all these places and do like manager conferences and all that stuff. And I'll never forget doing a management conference. It was in Savannah, Georgia, if I remember correctly. And I'm in the bathroom. I'm shooting dope in the bathroom, and then I'm going into this management meeting and sitting down and talking to all these, big wigs of the corporation, and just talking about my district and what I think it needs, and then I'd have to excuse myself and get up and go do a little more dope, and then come back, and and nobody had any idea. Like I said, it wasn't even about being high at that point. It was just about not being sick.
Right.
So. So it's just a funny aside. It's amazing how well we can chameleon by, just taking on whatever skin we need to be able to fit in that environment.
So from what I understand, not even your girlfriend knew at that point that the extent of your addiction.
No.
Okay.
She actually probably didn't find out, for a long time. She actually ended up, there was a whole other situation for why we broke up. It wasn't because of that.
Okay. So then what happened? Like, so you were working.
Well, at that time, I actually was no longer the district manager. I'd opened up a vape shop.
Okay.
And I was running a vape shop at the time. So when we broke up, that's kind of when things started to really go downhill. I didn't have a house anymore. I really didn't have I had a car, but it wasn't a steady thing. And so, I was living in my vape shop for a couple of weeks until I found someone that I could go and stay with. And then, it starts to snowball. It really does. Things just started getting worse and worse. I started mismanaging funds at the store. And, so then I wouldn't have the money to cover rent, or I wouldn't have money to get restocked or buy more, mods or whatever. Yeah. And so, and I had partners. So I wasn't in it by myself. I had two partners. And when they started realizing the mismatching of funds and all that, instead of just coming right out and firing me, they offered to buy me out. And they bought me out at a fraction of what I had invested in it. But at this point, I'm a heroin addict, so I don't really care. They're going to give me $15,000, and I'm down. So That's what I ended up doing. I ended up taking that money. I blew the majority of it on drugs and partying. And, I got an apartment. But, again, after a little while, things snowball. You mismanage your money. You can't pay your rent.
Man.
You end up. So I went through about a 15-year period of just being homeless, not homeless, homeless, not homeless, homeless, And then after my dad, the thing happened with my brother and my dad. My dad no longer wanted to live in that house. My brother actually passed away in my dad's bedroom, and he said, I can't sleep here no more.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what to do. He wanted to be closer to his grandchildren, and they lived in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So he said, I want to move up north. And that's what we ended up doing. And at that time, I really wanted to get off drugs. Now, you have to understand, this whole time, I wanted to get off drugs. I was never happy being a drug addict. I mean, I knew there was coming a time that I needed to go to rehab, but there was always an excuse. There was always a thing. And I'd been to rehabs, too. I always say 27, but that's just a guess. I would assume it's probably been around 25 to 30 different rehabs and attempts that I'd made to try and get off of heroin.
Wow.
Throughout that time, because I would be homeless, and I knew that if I, went into rehab, at least I'd have a place to stay. Right.
Okay.
At least I'd have a place to sleep, and I knew they would manage my withdrawals the best they could, with what medicine they're allowed to.
Now, would you stay the whole time, or would you guys?
I tried to stay as long as I possibly could, because I really was trying to get better.
And that many times, and you just never.
Yeah,
stuck.
because a lot of these programs are not long enough. The max is 28 days for most programs.
Okay.
So in 28 days, that's a giggle. I mean, compared to years and years of drug use, 28 days is not going to work.
Right.
So there were many attempts at that. And, the only thing I can say about that is, even though I wanted to, I say I wanted to, but I really didn't, I wasn't ready to make the sacrifices that were needed to actually make an attempt at sobriety. And it's an especially in the beginning, it's a minute by minute, fight. Sometimes a second by second fight.
Wow. Okay. So then your dad wanted to come up here.
Yep. So
now, had you been throughout this whole process of being homeless and addicted, had you stayed in touch with your dad?
Yeah, well,
except
for the last 2 years.
Okay.
So now, him shooting and killing my brother is actually what made me and my dad come back together.
Got it.
And start talking. And you see what happened was, I stole $20 off of him.
Okay.
I took his card. I went down to the ATM and I stole $20, and he caught me.
Ooh.
And that was it. With my brother, he'd already dealt with this with my brother.
Got it.
And then my mom, he'd been through this,
man. Yeah.
And so when it happened with me, he said, I'm done. I don't ever want to talk to you again.
Wow.
Go away. And that was it. And we didn't speak for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And, I spent time. I went up to West Virginia for a little while. I traveled up and down the East Coast as a homeless person. I'd been in a variety of states, a variety of cities, homeless. And so I ended up in Morgantown, West Virginia. And honestly, if you're ever going to be homeless, I recommend Morgantown, West Virginia. I ate pretty good there. And but to be fair, they have a great program there. They have a shelter. It's called the Bartlett House.
Okay.
And this place, I'll tell you what, man, those people there are just amazing. They have a really good program. They have a really good way of picking out the people who they think can make it. And they did that with me. I stayed for a couple of weeks, I was still using and stuff, but I was pretty normal, And so they asked, would you be interested in moving upstairs? So you go from a 65-bed shelter downstairs, which is just, 30-some bunk beds. You're sleeping under or on top of some guy you don't even know,
right.
To upstairs where there's only 3 or 4 bunk beds in a room. So you're only staying with 8 people.
Okay.
And then and the other thing is, downstairs, you come in at 7 p.m., you leave at 7 a.m. They don't care what the weather is. You're out. 7 a.m., get up, get out. Do not come back here till 7 p.m.
Right.
The upstairs program was different. You could come and go as you pleased, but you had to get a job. And when you got a job, they kept 80% of your income. Now, they didn't keep it. What they did was they banked it for you.
Okay.
So after, they'd give you 20% to get your cigarettes and little whatevers, okay? And I did that. You know, I will say that what made me a little different than a lot of drug addicts is that I always wanted to try to be a stable person. I always wanted to hold a job. I always wanted to try to have my own place.
Okay.
You know, but the addiction really stopped me from being able to do that. So what happened was I ended up banking up enough money to go and get my own place, and I found a cheap place up in a place called Grafton, West Virginia. So I went there, I stayed for a little while, and I was doing good for a couple of months. And then I don't know if you just attract it or if you subconsciously look for it, but I ended up meeting some people who were into doing heroin, and, you know, so I ended up back on it. And, of course, I lost that place. I ended up in a mission in Fairmont, West Virginia. I stayed there for several months. Now, the mission's a little different. It's, you know, they don't have the programs like that to get people on their feet. It's just kind of a place to stay and a kind of place to eat, and you figure out your own thing. Well, at that time, I knew that I needed something different. And that was my first experience with God.
Oh, okay.
And so I ended up going to this Baptist church. And while I was there, now I really wasn't looking for God.
Right.
What I was looking for was a Christian woman who was dumb and gullible enough.
Hey, that's honest. Okay.
I mean, it is. And that's what I ended up finding. And her name was Lynn.
Oh,
and
you found it gullible.
Yeah, I
Christian
did.
woman?
I did. And her name was Lynn.
Okay.
And after I told her my story and made her feel bad for me, she offered to let me come. She talked to her mom, and they offered for me to come and stay there.
Okay.
And, you know, again, we're not going to, this ain't a 3-hour podcast, but to this day, I still feel terrible. And then I've talked to her since then.
Good.
And then I've made amends with her and told her everything, you know, was going on. I was on drugs, and, you know, even then I was doing benzos and all that.
Yeah.
I'll never forget a story. She told me one day I was walking around downtown. I was all zannied out, and apparently I walked up to a cop in full uniform and asked him if he wanted to buy some pills. And he thought that I was just mentally ill, so he asked where I lived, and he took me back over there, and Lynn covered for me. She said, you know what, he is suffering from some mental stuff right now, and so he just let me go. I know that sounds crazy, but I swear to you, that's really what happened. I hope he hears this, and he goes, I was that cop. Yeah.
Man.
But that's when Lynn found out about my drug use. And that's when her mom said, you're gone. Now, I had stolen from them. I had actually faked a burglary to their house. I kicked their door in, and I took $400 of their rent money and went and got drugs and blamed it on the neighbor. You know,
man.
I even called the cops and reported it and everything. I mean, I'm trying to tell you,
horrible.
I got stories. But anyway.
Man.
So
when you always say you wouldn't have wanted to know me back then,
I'm telling you the truth. You would not have wanted to know me back then.
So you
I am not.
You got
so
kicked
her
out.
mother politely asked me to leave at the end of a shotgun, and
Good
that
West
went
Virginia
back.
woman.
Yeah, right. I went back to the mission, and I was there about a month, and I was just sick of it. So I said, "That's it. I'm walking back to Florida," and I did. I walked. And I got all the way to Charleston, which is 100 and some miles, and my feet were swollen like pumpkins.
My.
And so finally I broke the silence, and I called my dad, and I said, Dad, if you'll just get me a bus ticket back to Florida, I'll leave you alone. And so that's what I ended up doing. He ended up getting me a bus ticket. He said, you've got to be at this place this is what time the bus leaves. I had like 18 minutes to get there. Oh my goodness. And I just made it too. And I made it on that bus. And I'm telling you, I must have smelled terrible. I mean, I'd been walking for days. I was living in a mission. It was awful. And I sat in the back of the bus, and I know I smelled bad because nobody would sit around me. So I made it down to Florida,
man.
and believe it or not, my dad actually picked me up from the bus stop, and he took me back to the house. At this time, Adam was still around, and I stayed at his house for a little while until I healed up and long enough for me to find another woman to use. And that's what I ended up doing, find another woman. This is the woman who had the kids and all that stuff.
Okay.
And then, like I said, the thing with Adam, then I stole the money from Dad, and a couple years later is when the thing with Adam happened, and that's kind of what brought us back together. So we moved up to Weirton, West Virginia. My cousin Richard had a house he was working on. It wasn't finished, but we said, if we help you work on the house, can we stay there, for a while? And he said, yeah, we don't live there. You're more than welcome to stay there as long as you want. And we stayed there for about 3 years.
Okay.
Almost 4 years. And, I'd met a girl there, but I fell in love. Like, I really loved her.
Yeah.
And she was also an addict. She was a user, but...
Okay.
She introduced me to Suboxone, buying Suboxone on the street.
Got it. Okay.
And now I realized, wow, I can take this pill and it's good for days.
So Suboxone was kind of new at that time then, probably.
So believe it or not, actually, Suboxone's not that new. It was actually invented in the 60s over in Germany.
Okay.
And it was invented as a pain medication. It's called It's actually called buprenorphine. That's the name of the drug.
Okay.
But they realized that it was helpful for people who had opiate addiction, that it calmed their cravings, it stopped them from having withdrawal, and it doesn't make you high.
Okay.
So there's a whole scientific lesson on the size of
But it
buprenorphine
became, I know
molecules.
that for a while it became the new opiate that was just
it did.
given out like candy.
It was. So that's called Subutex. So Subutex is just buprenorphine without the naloxone. And so what that is it all depends. It's such a There's a really long, there's a super long conversation there.
But you were introduced to Suboxone off the street.
Right. Okay. I was introduced to it because she would take it. She'd say, if we couldn't get no dope, she'd say, well, I can get a sub. And I'd say, I didn't want it. I was like, no, I want dope. I'm trying to, I'm trying to use dope. I'm not trying to use subs, whatever that is. And so finally one day she talked me into just taking a half of one. She said, just take a half of one. And I did. I took a half of one and boom, my withdrawal was gone. And the nice thing about it was I woke up the next day and I wasn't sick. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not sick. And I was like, how long does this last? She's like, oh, you won't be sick for a few days. She said, but like the third or fourth day, you're going to really start feeling sick again. So, excuse me. So then I was like, whoa, wait a minute. If I can take this and feel normal and it'll last several days, it's only $10 a pill. Oh, man, I can do this. Wow. So that was my new plan. My new plan was to use that and try to wean myself down and off of that stuff.
Got it.
But it, again, doesn't happen because we're drug addicts. And the only thing a drug addict understands is more.
Man.
And so eventually I was tired of buying it off the street. The price went up and, you start using more than one. You start using a couple a day because it'll get you a little bit of energy. It's not like heroin, but it'll get you a little bit of energy. And so I started working with the person I was buying it off of. She said, I will cover you going to the clinic and getting a prescription for these. I get half of them. You get the other half. And then, you don't have to pay no more and you'll have enough, you'll have enough for the month because they'll give you 2 a day. So actually, they gave you 3 a day back then. So I said, yeah, sign me up. So that's what I did. I ended up going to a program just for the drugs. Now, this was in West Virginia. This is before I went to the program in Lisbon.
Okay.
So I went to that program. I did that for a little while. And then it ended up that, again, another story. My dad actually, a Dish Network technician fell off the roof of my house and landed on my dad, and he ended up suing them and getting $68,000, which was enough for us to buy a piece of property in East Palestine.
Okay.
So once we did that, we moved to East Palestine. Now, so that's how you got to Ohio from Pennsylvania. Right. Okay. So I skipped over a very important story there, though. So on Christmas Day of 2016, I found that girl that I was dating and very much in love with dead from an overdose.
The one that introduced you to Suboxone?
Yes. So that's the one I had been dating
Wow.
for almost 3 years. And like I said, on Christmas Day, I went to go pick her up to go to her family's house for a Christmas party.
Yeah.
And I found her dead. That's another long story. So now you got to understand that my clean date is November 18th, 2017. So Christmas 2016, November 2017, that's how long after she died before I finally figured out that I don't want to do this anymore. Now, in that time also, I suffered an overdose and was pronounced dead for 10 minutes. And that's another fantastic story. But
Real quick, we have about 20 minutes, I'd say. Can you take 2 minutes to tell that story?
yeah,
Just
absolutely.
about waking
So-
up. Okay.
So, real quick, and this is a very brief version of this story. The only thing I really remember from it was I woke up and I was trying to speak, and I realized I couldn't speak. And the reason I couldn't speak is that there was a tube in my throat. So I reached up and I pulled the tube out of my throat. And as I pulled the tube out of my throat, the technician who was in my room cleaning up the plastic, you see, they were waiting for the morgue to come upstairs and take me down because they had already pronounced me dead. They thought I was laying in there dead.
Wow.
So when I pulled it out, I must have made a noise. He freaks out, starts screaming, "Hey, he's alive in here. He's alive in here."
Oh,
The
man.
next thing I know, a doctor moves the curtain back, looks at me and goes, "I pronounced you dead 10 minutes ago," and walks away. Well, I realized then that I needed to start making some changes. And I did. So I went to Family Recovery in Lisbon, and I'll tell you, I love those people up there. They did everything as far as for me perfect that they could have, because when I walked into that place, I told them, I'm not here for counseling. I'm not here for your groups or your AA or your 12 steps. I'm here for Suboxone. It's the only reason I'm here. It's the only reason I want to be here. And they said the best thing they possibly could have ever said to me. Okay, that's fine.
Wow.
Because they knew at least if I could
They were
hear
just
the message, then, then
You were
maybe
off
it
the
would
street
stick.
and
Right.
everything,
And
yeah.
at least I was in there and I was getting some kind of help. And
Right.
I was being monitored. Doctor would look at me all the time. They would push for me to go get medical care and stuff. So anyway, so that's that story real quick.
That's awesome.
So
Okay, and we're going to come back to it, but what you said was the reason naturally that you were able to recover. And okay, you know what? Before I tell that, let me just say real quick. I meant to cut in halfway. Instead of mentioning our sponsors at the beginning, I decided to do it in the middle. So real quick, just to remind you guys, we are at Cigar Studio or Lounge. And so if you hear laughing and talking in the background, it's because people come here to enjoy a cigar.
It's awesome.
And the downstairs floor is public. You could come in, pick a cigar. They have lots to choose from. They have a house cigar that this is the only place that you could get it other than the place that is made in Miami. And then the whole upstairs is for members.
it's awesome.
So it's a really cool place. It's one of a kind, unique cigar studio.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing.
I call it a cigar studio, like behind the
You're
scenes,
right.
because this is where we
Right,
record about this. But then I'd like to also thank the Gallagher building in downtown Youngstown. They actually have long-term units and Airbnbs. And that's super important for those of you who are coming into the area to stay or to visit or check it out, or for people who have friends and family that come in. Each unit has its own kitchen, washer and dryer. So it's really nice, a home away from home. So we just want to thank those. And Ohio Flame. Ohio Flame does custom-made fire pits. And I love backyard barbecues, backyard cookouts. I love when neighbors come together or friends and just strangers. And I love that whole community thing. And fire pits are such a way to make that happen. So if you want a custom-made fire pit, definitely go to www.ohioflame.com. They're meant to last a lifetime, and they are such good quality. You could customize them and everything.
They are super nice, actually. I've picked up a couple of those
Yeah.
as donations for the Boardman Band.
Oh.
And they really are. They're very high quality. They're really nice. They're super heavy.
Look at
You need at least two
that.
people to
That's-
lift them.
Yeah. Once you put them down, they'll definitely be talked about.
They're
but
not going anywhere.
Yeah, you're not like, let me put this in the garage afterwards.
Right.
Yeah.
No, they're great. They
So,
really are. So great
definitely,
companies.
that was- yeah,
All these
definitely-
sponsors are amazing people.
So that's why you hear people enjoying each other's company. That's why, because we're at Cigar Lounge. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So
Now-
moving on, let's,
Real quick, the reason you were able to come back to life in that room is
Right.
you had mentioned because of what?
so you would think it was the attempts from the doctors and the nurses and all that, but actually what we really figured out was it was the Narcan that was administered to me, the 12 milligrams of Narcan that was administered to me on the EMT bus, on the ambulance.
Wow.
And so what that is it's like a nasal spray that you can carry around. This is one of the things that I promote and I talk about is I feel everybody should be trained and carry a Narcan kit with them. You never know when you're going to come across somebody who may be having an overdose, and you might save someone like me one day. And
So what is it? It's not a needle. It's not a needle, right?
It's a nasal spray. It's just like Flonase.
Okay.
It's just a tiny little nasal spray. You put one in one nostril, you put the other in the other nostril, and that's it. It works its way through the bloodstream, and what it is it's naloxone, and what that does is it's a barrier. It puts a barrier for the opiates. It immediately counteracts the effects of opiates, and it brings somebody out of an overdose. If you apply it fast enough. That's why I say everybody should carry one. You never know when you are going to be in that situation. And, a lot of people say, well, how am I supposed to know? How would I know somebody's having an overdose? First of all, if someone is laying on the ground unresponsive, my suggestion to you, this is an epidemic and they're probably having an overdose. But even if they're not, and you administer the Narcan, it's not going to hurt them. The only thing this does is it counteracts the opiates. So let's say you give Narcan to a heart attack victim. Mm-hmm. It's not going to hurt them. It's not going to affect.
Might if they're having a heart attack and you don't give them CPR.
Well, Right. Well, CPR is part of the whole training. You need to learn how to give,
Okay, and you give that seminar
absolutely.
or whatever. Okay.
I give that training. I am certified to give that training.
Got it.
So, again, very important.
So that's another reason people come have you speak.
Absolutely.
Is more instructional rather than story-based.
And then we also pass out kits.
It could be instructional. Okay.
So I'm big about passing out kits. So
okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons people have me come speak.
Okay.
They have me come speak because I was severely bullied throughout high school to the point that I dropped out in the 8th grade. So I speak about bullying and how to deal with that.
And let's just say I'm going to put you out there because this is really something that you can talk about because here as an adult, as a part of your sobriety and a part of your walking things out, you had to go back to get your GED.
Yeah,
all these years later.
I'm currently doing that right now. I'm actually looking to finish that program up at the end of the month.
Right. So what a story for those of you who are listening. If you do need a speaker to come talk about that, that's something that, in addition, I mean, if anybody would have had a reason to drop out of high school or a reason to drop out, but yet here he is trying to go back to do it. So it's just better to finish, but that's another rabbit trail.
It absolutely is better to finish,
all right,
of course.
So since we're kind of coming into the home stretch.
Right.
So tell me about then, okay, so you decide to go in, you get clean at this place in Lisbon, and then how are you here right now?
Okay, so I
why did it work that time and not all the 23 other times?
I think it worked that time because I was committed to it. And I didn't care what it took at that point. I knew that I was going to have to sacrifice a lot. I knew that I was going to have to commit to a lot of things. And then also, I found Jesus Christ, and that really was a big influence on my most recent change. You see, I was in the program, but I was just working regular jobs. I never wanted to be a public speaker. Yeah. I didn't want to go out and share all of this personal stuff about me, but
it's very vulnerable.
I feel like I need to. I feel like that's my purpose. My whole life I wondered, why would all this stuff happen to me? Why? From the time I was 5 months old until now, why would all these terrible things over and over again? I haven't went 5 years without severe trauma. I'm duly certified in the state of Ohio as a chemical dependency counselor and peer recovery support professional, but I don't do that anymore because I had a client commit suicide. So, I just have suffered a vast array of traumas throughout my life, and I just couldn't understand them. I just the most unluckiest guy in the world, and then one day I just decided to give it a shot, and I prayed to God, and I asked him, I said, God, why would you let all this stuff happen to me? And he answered me. God spoke to me, and he said, it's because I don't call the qualified, Aaron. I qualify the called, and you better be pretty excited about your qualifications. And I'll tell you that I am.
Before you met Jesus or after you met Jesus?
I would say this was in my agnostic period where I didn't know if
So
there was
you
a God
heard-
because I was a militant atheist for over 40 years.
Okay.
I not only didn't believe in God, I hated him. And
So you heard God's voice even before you believed in him?
fully, yeah, absolutely, he spoke to
Okay.
me. Absolutely.
And then
I just knew. I just knew.
okay, that you
know?
had that peace about what you had gone through.
Yes,
Because that's a question that a lot of people have. Like, why did this person have a good life and parents who loved them and all this stuff, and then why me?
Because everybody has their own walk.
Right. So have you been now currently longer than 5 years since your last great trauma? Because I don't think that that's something you necessarily want to
close.
continue
It's close.
on in life.
I'm coming up on the 5 years
All right.
here
Well, don't
pretty soon.
expect some major trauma. So, because now you're changed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
See,
so,
I'm not concerned about it now. I
Right.
mean, and even if I did, it's just
Yeah.
I have a completely different way of handling it at this point.
Okay. So you said that the biggest. Did you meet Jesus in rehab? Then is that
No,
when you? Okay.
No. So how that came about was I started questioning my belief system and whether there was a God or not, and so I challenged God and what I was trying to get my chemical dependency counselor license and all that, and I did. I worked on that. And when I went to go get the job, they told me I needed a driver's license. Well, long story short, I found out I needed $7,000 to get my driver's license back.
Okay.
I went to bed one night. I didn't have $7,000. And I went to bed one night and I said to God, you know what? If you really want me to do this, you're going to have to do something, because you know what? If you want me to believe in you, you want me to follow you, you want me to do all these things, I need this. If this is really what I'm supposed to do, prove it to me. The next morning I got up, my dad asked me, can you build a shelf in my closet? I want to germinate these seeds. And I said, Dad, I don't even think we have $20 in our account to buy a piece of wood. Let me check. I opened up my bank account, and no lie, there was $21,000 in my bank. And my first thought wasn't, oh, yeah, I have $21,000. My first thought was, oh, man, they've totally screwed up my bank account. I have no idea how much money I have at this point. What am I going to do? I'm going through my deposits, and I realized that a pension that I had fought and fought for years. And the last time I called them, they told me they had no record of me ever filing for this pension.
Wow.
Well, not only did they go through, but they gave me a year of back pension. Now, listen, this is the morning after I prayed this prayer to God.
Wow.
Okay. Now, it didn't immediately make me go, oh, okay, God, woo, bow down. All right, you win. Mm-hmm. I went, okay, that's cute. All right. And that just opened my eyes and opened my ears. And so I just slowly started on a journey of
So
trying.
you went from militant atheist to agnostic and like, okay,
Right,
maybe and then to kind of God revealing himself to you at different small points.
And it terrified me. So when things terrify me, what I do is I try to disprove them. So that's what I did. I tried to disprove the resurrection. I tried to disprove the existence of Jesus, and I tried to disprove the Bible. And I failed miserably at all three of those things. Okay. I mean miserably. So the more I researched, the more I learned, the more I did, the more misconceptions that I thought I knew. I thought I knew this was right, and it wasn't. I thought I knew this, like there are 3 wise men. That actually doesn't say how many wise men there are. Just little things like that made me go, I was an idiot. I thought I was an atheist, but I really didn't know what I was talking about. Okay. And the more I did that, the more God would show me. He just slowly started showing me, look here, look there, look here, look there, and now, I mean, I just don't know what I would do without Christ. I really don't.
That's kind of what you credit. I guess what I'm getting at is this has been a long road for you.
Yes.
It's been a long road. You're still somewhat a newbie, even though it's not a new thing but in as far as like for how long you were in addiction, then you're still, but still
I'm
walking
still
out that journey. And
I'm still a babe.
So, but what really made the difference was knowing that you're loved by like a connection with God.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then even though I spit in his face for 40 years and I said things about God and did things in against the name of God that I don't know how anyone could ever have possibly forgiven him. Not only that, but the things I did to his followers, the people who loved him, because I actively seek them out to destroy them. I actively seek them out to use them because I know that they're caring and loving and they're easily manipulated. So as an addict, that's what I would do, is I would seek these people out. So not only did I spit in God's face, I tried to hurt the people that he loved and the people that loved him. I didn't deserve this. Like, I didn't deserve none of what I've received from God,
Wow.
And so anyway,
that's pretty cool.
So I also speak about that. I also speak about my experience of being a really hardcore atheist and then finding the love of Christ and just how he just shows himself in my life every day now.
I think the one of the reasons I find that so cool is because there are so many people out there and so many people that I've talked to and I know still out there who feel like God can't forgive them. They feel so unloved because they haven't been shown love in their life for whatever reason. And so I guess that's really why I wanted you to drive that point home.
Yeah.
Because there are people who will, their
There's
willpower,
nothing you can do.
They want to be clean. Like you said, I kind of want it to be back to normal, but without knowing that they are loved, without knowing that God cares about them, then it becomes all about my willpower, and our willpower always fails. And so for the person who's out there, and then I'm going to ask you one more question. Then I'm going to ask you our last and final question that we ask everybody. But for the person out there listening right now, who may be a working addict, who might be listening, but they're really struggling, or maybe they got addicted during COVID era, and it's just kind of starting to like scare them a little bit.
Right.
Talk to them real quick.
The only thing I can tell you is just to keep working at it. You can do it. If anyone can do it, it's me. I know that it's not an easy choice to make. I know it's difficult, especially, like I said, I can relate to opiate addicts, but there's other addicts out there too. There's cocaine addicts and meth addicts that don't have this medication to help them. And I understand your struggle. I do. And all I can tell you is that it is absolutely worth it. The freedom of not having to wake up every day and find that drug or worry about whether or not you're going to have it later, And then on top of that, I also really want to stress your being in the environment of God and trying to bring God into your environment. And real quick, I just want to say, when God wanted to create fish, he spoke to the water. And when God wanted to create trees, he spoke to the ground. When God wanted to create humans, he spoke to himself. And if you pull a fish out of water, it'll die. If you pull a tree out of the ground, it'll die. And I believe that if you pull a human being out of the environment of God, his soul will die.
Wow.
And I just really want to bring that point home that, can you do it without God? Yeah, but man, if only I would have done this so much sooner, and how much he helps me now. You think, well, God's helping you now because you're clean, you're doing all these good things. No. I'm not perfect. I'm not good. I'm not good at all. I have terrible thoughts sometimes, and sometimes I overreact, and then I get mad, and I'm not some kind of perfect Christian. I'm certainly not. But if anyone who's undeserved of God's love, it's me. And yet he still loves me, and he still helps me every single day. Things happen now, and it's not, I don't just cower in a corner, or I don't just fall down. I go to him and I give it to him, and if it's something I can work on, great. If it's not, because God, we're done with it. That's it, and it's gone. We forget it. All that pain from my past, from being sexually trafficked and the drugs, losing everybody that I've loved, finding my girlfriend dead on Christmas Day. All that was with me my whole entire life. It just ate at me inside, ate at me. And one time I asked God, will you please just take that away from me or explain why it hurts? And he did. And now it's gone. And for, again, they say that there's no cure for addiction, but that's absolutely not true. There absolutely is a cure for addiction. I don't even think about using drugs anymore. I would smack somebody in the mouth if they even came around me with drugs right now. Like, that's how much I despise it at this point, And it's that's God. That's God that took that away from me. That's not Aaron Shope. That's Jesus Christ. So, I cannot stress that enough.
Aaron Shope offering you the rope to hope. All right, now that
corny.
tagline makes so much more sense. That's amazing,
isn't it?
All right. Last and final question that we ask almost every single one of our podcast guests. We like to extend and expand all the listener circles.
Right.
So, in your world, what are 3 of your favorite local places that you would say, "Hey, these are my favorite places," or you got to try these places?
So I'm prepared for this now.
Got it.
All right.
Okay.
So my first one is Capriotti's.
Capriotti's?
Yes.
Where's
it's
that?
in Canton. It's in Canton.
Okay.
They're from Las Vegas. They just came out here. It's like a sub sandwich shop. It's called Capriotti's. It is so amazing. I just ate there the other day. It is now my new favorite Philly cheesesteak place.
Okay.
My
Capriotti's
second place
in Canton, Ohio. Okay.
My second place is not a restaurant, and I'm sorry, but these people have done a lot for me, and I really appreciate them. They keep my car running all the time. It's R&R Tire in Boardman. Now let me tell you, they offer a payment plan and stuff, and they're very straightforward about that. If you don't pay in the 3 months, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. But it's very nice to be able to spread that out over the months, and they've always been right there. Yep. We'll fix it. Yep.
Okay.
We got it. And if they don't got it, they can fix it. You know what? I just got to give them a hand because for me personally, I'm sure a lot of people have different experiences.
Don't go
but for me,
trying to not pay because you'll pay.
No. Yeah, you'll pay $1,200 a tire if you end up doing the 2-year plan. But they tell you that they don't hide this from you. They tell you if you don't pay this off in your 4 6 months, whatever they arrange with you,
to be on the road right now.
Yeah, and if you can't fix it right now, they'll let you. They're very helpful. Anyway.
Do they just do tires?
Tires, anything that touches the ground. So rotors, alignments, anything that has to do with your suspension,
that still
all of
scares
that.
me, but I get it. The
I
credit
know,
cards
but I
could be
just
like that
really,
too, yeah.
I'm telling you, they just have been really good to me.
Okay.
They really have.
That's awesome.
So,
and they must be needed because they're still in business.
They're absolutely needed. I mean, I can't afford $1,200 to put new shocks all around my car. But they allowed me to spread that out over 6 months, which made it a $200 a month payment.
Yeah.
Boom. It was really nice. So
Very
it did
nice.
help. So
okay. All right. So R&R.
R&R, I love them guys.
All right.
And then my final place is going to be Gorby's. And
almost every time I see you.
I know.
Because we're part of a local speaking and leadership club together. And so I see Aaron usually about once a week now, fairly recent, for about a year, right?
Yeah.
And,
yep.
And he always has his coffee from Gorby's.
I do.
So
I love
think
Gorby's.
that's
They're out in
about
Negley in East Palestine. I'm not sure if they have any other locations. My favorite location is the Negley location. I just, again, nice, convenient little store.
Yeah.
They're out there in the middle of nowhere. You don't have to drive all the way to Calcutta to get, something. So
right.
I just, of local places that I love.
Negley.
Yep, absolutely.
And where you're going to get your coffee.
And then one more I got for you. So this isn't Youngstown. This is also out in my area because I live out there.
Okay.
And it's LMB Donuts in downtown East Liverpool. They're amazing. That's where we have
Is it
our...
like the letter L and
L,
B?
Yep, L and B. Yeah,
L and B. Okay.
And this is where we have our men's church meeting every week, and they're just...
What are they, like homemade donuts or something?
They have homemade donuts and breakfast foods. They're like a restaurant. Yeah, they're so good. They're in downtown East Liverpool.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't accidentally go through downtown East Liverpool.
Right.
So I would never know about that if it not for somebody who that's their route.
And their donuts are so good. I mean, they're not White House Fruit Farm good, but they're pretty good.
Okay. All right. So that you're allowed for. That's
right.
Totally okay.
Thanks. Appreciate it. And then I snuck the White House in there at the end. You like that?
Well, I have to sneak in real quick. I have to sneak in Get Go Coffee because they have the real half and half. They have you could use. And listen, I don't care who you are, what you say. There is no substitute for real half and half. Don't give me that no international crap. No,
I love how everybody's coffee tastes are so different.
No, no fake
I
crap,
love it.
and definitely no powder.
That's so gross.
All right, so I have to give Get Go a shout out because they have all those options. They have all the options. They have whipped cream sometimes, so it's great. But anyway, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story.
And if I can, real quick, I just want to share
can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I just want to share my website real quick.
Yes,
so my
please.
website is my name. It's Aaron, AARONR. My middle name's Ray.
Okay.
Shope, SHOPE.com. So it's AaronRShope.com.
Okay.
And that's honestly the best way to get a hold of me.
See, you should have done Shope to Hope. No, Hope to... I don't know. Something. Never mind.
Shope
Aaron
on a
R.
rope.
Shope. Shope on a rope. That sounds so bad. Okay. Dangling hope by a rope.
Oh, trust me, we were dangling there for a while.
All right. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you guys. AaronRShope.com. And we just want to once again thank Cigarro Cigar Club for letting us meet here, record our podcast here. We want to thank the Gallagher for believing and backing Youngstown Click Be Connected podcast. And we want to thank www.ohioflame.com. Also, the Gallagher, you can find them on Facebook and get all the details you need there and how to book, etc. So until next time, guys, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. No matter who you are or where you're at, remember that you are not alone, that you are loved, and that your story is not over. There is tomorrow. You are made for a purpose. And just take a breath and reset. And if you need help, or if you feel like you don't know where to turn and whatever, reach out to Aaron.
Absolutely.
www.aaronrshope.com, because there is always somebody to help you go into the next part of your journey. So love you guys, and thank you for listening. Until next time, make sure you check out previous episodes of Youngstown Click Be Connected podcast as well. We have some great episodes, and we're going into season 2. So, all right, talk to you guys later.